Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome to today's edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show podcast.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. Encourage you to join the crew. Go subscribe to the podcast. Holidays coming 1 week from Thanksgiving. Then Christmas season will be here. New Year's, you're going to be on the road a lot. Why not join the monster numbers of people out there that are subscribing to the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show podcast? 40% increase in unique listeners in October for our biggest unique listening audience month ever. Thank you for all who have made that possible. We encourage you to go ahead and sign up. You can search out my name, Clay Travis. You can search out Buck Sexton. Boom. You'll be able to take the show with you no matter where you are for the holiday season. We're headed up. Now, I'm not sure if he's in Milwaukee right now or if he's in Washington, D.C. Senator Ron Johnson joins us, recently reelected. And, Senator, I want to start with this. Republicans have won the House. There was a report that you were visiting with Congressman Jim Jordan along with several other senators to help set up investigations into COVID, into Dr. Fauci, the origins of COVID, all of those things. It doesn't look like you're going to have the ability in the Senate to necessarily set the agenda for all of these hearings. But what will the House be able to do, and have you been working with the House side to help facilitate those investigations?
Sure. Well, obviously it'd be better had we won a majority in the Senate, and I'd be chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations with the gavel and subpoena power. But because the House won the majority, they will have subpoena power. We have, a number of offices that have been investigating, all the scandals throughout all these agencies, and we've been working together literally for years. So we just met to, again, I think, pledge cooperation, do everything we can. It is interesting with all these whistleblowers coming forward, and we encourage more to do so in federal health agencies, federal law enforcement, but they'll come to different offices. And, we all protect their identities, so it is important that our offices share the information. We'll have different whistleblowers, different pieces of information, different pieces of the puzzle. And so the good news is, certainly Senator Grass and I, our staffs have worked together very well. Senator Paul, we have very similar interests when it comes to a lot of the issues surrounding COVID. Representative Jordan, we've been working together for years. We've had staff go back and forth between our offices, so our staffs work together very well. So, and Representative Comer as well. So it's just a very good meeting. The whole purpose behind this, by the way, is to get to the bottom of things, to expose the truth, because the American people deserve the truth. So, again, it's disappointing we don't have the gavel over here on the Senate side, but in addition to subpoenas, which truthfully, with the Democrat Department of Justice, it's going to be difficult to enforce those. So we also have things like FOIA requests. I mean, one of the things we've done is the 4,000 pages of Fauci emails that were FOIA'd, that were received, heavily redacted. Our staff took a look at that. We identified 400 pages we wanted to look at unredacted. Now, it was like pulling teeth, but we've looked, I think, at 360 of those 400 pages. They confirm a lot of the cover-up from my standpoint, but it's interesting. We're down to about 50 pages. HHS will not allow us to see that. Well, that's kind of an interesting piece of information, isn't it? I'm sure that'll be some of the first documents that the House will subpoena, because the American people deserve to know what's under those redactions, those final 50 pages.
Senator Johnson's Buck, appreciate you being with us. And we know that, fortunately for the people of Wisconsin and for the country, you were able to win re-election. But it was close. It was closer than we thought it was going to be based on some of the polling. Clay and I have spent a lot of time speaking to everybody from pollsters to campaign consultants to people who are actually running in these races about the machinery. I just wanted to hear what you think about some of the after-action criticisms about the GOP not leveraging, say, early voting? And also, are there any things in your state that are funky the way they are in, say, Arizona or Nevada that show a way that the Democrats are trying to rig the rules in their favor?
Well, first of all, and thank you for letting me come on and thank your audience for their support. But you know how many times I came on and said, I just view this as a dead even race.
You did.
This is Wisconsin. The three races I've won, one was by 100,000 votes. The second one was 100,000 votes. This last one now is by 26,000 votes. You've all seen the county map of the United States. It's all red, except for some bright blue dots, right? Our states are the same way. So we have a far more difficult challenge, bringing out low propensity voters. Democrats, we believe, and we have to do an after action, we have to really analyze the data, but it appears that Democrats did a phenomenal job of focusing on Madison, Wisconsin, and focusing on the abortion issue, and sending people out with 10 names and getting those people to turn their absentee ballots, okay? So they did a good job. Our challenge is we've got to do that statewide. 30% of the votes in Wisconsin come from all the rural communities. It's a much more difficult task. But the other reality is that Democrats lie with impunity. That is the hallmark of the 2022 election, is Democrats didn't tell the truth at all. They couldn't defend their records, so they lied through their teeth. And unfortunately, the media, they're not journalists anymore, they're advocates, and they amplified those lies. So we have enormous challenges. I will say in terms of election integrity, we had a robust election integrity component to our election. I was actually quite surprised that Milwaukee got their vote totals in pretty early in the evening. It was really the networks that refused to call the race, hoping that something would come up so that they could challenge and do a recount. But, that's why I all but declared victory kind of in the wee hours of the morning, because it was obvious. But I think our robust election integrity component really did discipline the process. We had 5,000 poll workers versus 1,650 the previous election. We had every shift filled with the election observers. They were allowed to observe. Now, we had to go to court in a couple of cases, but the things we did on the front end, I think everybody in Wisconsin, I don't think anybody's questioning the results. Let's face it, we had bipartisan results. I won, our gubernatorial candidate, other statewide candidates lost. So there's really nothing to complain about. But again, we really didn't see anything significant on the ground or on election night because we deterred it by having observation, and we had poll workers.
Senator Johnson, this morning, and we're going to play some of this audio later in the show, the House announced that they're going to be conducting a real investigation into Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, potentially illicit relationships from a financial perspective with foreign adversaries. What can the Senate do to help that investigation? How important is it? I know you found yourself in the middle of this based on FBI helping to cover up for Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's connection to him. How important is having the gavel in the House to conduct that investigation? What do you anticipate they're going to be able to uncover?
Well, again, hopefully the truth. But how we can all work together is, once again, we have different whistleblowers coming to our offices. Different whistleblowers have confidence in one committee ranking member versus the other. So we'll have different pieces of the puzzle, but we can all support each other's efforts. We've certainly have information from our whistleblower on the Hunter Biden, and I brought this up with Director Ray today at the hearing, that we have whistleblowers said they were not going to look at the Hunter Biden laptop, that they weren't going to change the outcome of the election again. Those are some pretty revealing pieces of information. Chuck Grassley has whistleblowers saying that the FBI had a scheme in August of 2020 to basically downplay the derogatory information. So, again, as corrupt as the Biden family is, as important, if maybe more important, is the corruption within federal law enforcement. And then, of course, you have the corrupt and complicit media. All these things need to be exposed. We've got, what I think is a great lawsuit with Missouri and Louisiana. We have that Attorney General now is a U.S. Senator-elect, Eric Schmidt, uncovering the cooperation, I'd say the collusion between the Biden administration and the big tech social media giants. So there's so much to look at. There's so much corruption. There's so much to be exposed. It's going to take a lot of bodies to do it. And so that's what we all have is we've got different investigators. We've got different people coming to us. We have different pieces of information, and we're going to cooperate as best we can, as much as we can.
Senator Johnson, you've got a 50-49 deficit right now. There's a runoff that's going on in Georgia. It was a 50-50 Senate 2 years ago. Could be a 50-50 Senate again. What is the difference from your perspective on 50-50 Senate versus 51-49 for people out there listening in Georgia or who may be thinking about donating money potentially to Herschel Walker against the Reverend Raphael Warnock? From your perspective, what difference does that make?
It's a huge difference. 50-50 Senate gives us equal representation on the committee. So in case of a really horrible nominee, we have a better chance of blocking it. You know, even though we control the House, we would not put it past the Democrats in the Senate, even though it would make no sense. They couldn't utilize blowing up the Senate, getting rid of the filibuster to really pass legislation with the House, but they just may do it anyway, just to get it done. And if it's 51-49, all they need is, we would need both Sinema and Joe Manchin to stand firm, but they still may be able to defeat that as well. So it's just too fine a line. And 50-50 is just so much better than 51-49. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a big deal.
Well, we're very happy to see that both Kemp and Trump have said they will be helping Herschel get across the finish line there. So some unity on the GOP side in Georgia that could have a really big impact as you laid out. Before I let you go, Senator Johnson, I've just got to ask you, I've got some data in front of me here. We're a week out from Thanksgiving, and there's always these fun charts of which states have what the most popular Thanksgiving side is in every state of the union. What is your favorite Thanksgiving side?
Man, that's hard to say, but it's got to be the dressing because it's kind of special when you do it. But you need all the things with it. I mean, dressing just by itself isn't good, but I mean, you need the turkey, the gravy, the dressing, the mashed potatoes, and the corn, and the sweet potatoes. I need it all. I have it.
He's in all of the above, Clay.
All right, last question for you, and it's a big one. I am a Tennessee Titan fan. Your Green Bay Packers, Senator, Thursday night football. My team is traveling up to Lambeau. You guys got a nice win over the Cowboys. Are the Packers back? Does Aaron Rodgers and crew get it done tonight?
Well, that looked pretty good, last Sunday. So, we've done it before. I mean, we won the Super Bowl after 6 losses or with 6 losses. So it's entirely possible. And you've seen our receiving core now step up the plate. It's entirely possible. What I can absolutely guarantee is that the folks in Green Bay will be very nice to anybody coming up from Tennessee. We're just very nice people.
It's a phenomenal place to watch a game. I'm looking forward to watching it tonight. Senator, so glad we got you for 6 more years. We appreciate you spending time with us.
Take care. Thanks.
Senator Johnson there. Clay, you know what the number one favorite side in Wisconsin is for Thanksgiving? Baked potato.
Interesting.
Which I was kind of like a little thrown by that. The Northeast, so Pennsylvania, New York, New England, dominated by love of Thanksgiving stuffing and sweet potato with marshmallow. Do you know what, in your home state of Tennessee, the number one Thanksgiving side, according to Thrillist, I don't know if that's like definitive,
accurate, but stuffing?
Hash brown casserole.
Oh, that is, first of all, I'm all about it, all right? Most people don't even have a hash brown casserole.
I don't even know what that
is.
I got to come back to Tennessee, the Travis household, to eat some hash brown casserole.
I'm going to call out Thrillist on this. We have a lot of pecan pie. We've got a lot of the marshmallow with the sweet potatoes, that combo. A lot of, greens on the side, all that stuff. But a hash brown casserole is not the peak of the Tennessee Thanksgiving staple.
Interesting. Texas, it's creamed corn. Florida, it is rolls.
Rolls are big in the South.
Yeah.
We do bread well down here.
So it's an interesting breakdown. You do get some regional stuff. But the funniest of all to me is Washington State. We love our Washington State listeners. But number one up there, roasted vegetables Well, what kind of Marxist nonsense is that? Roasted
You know what
veggies?
I'm a big fan of that's probably going to throw you into spasms of outrage? Canned cranberries. I
like that.
I love the jellied, and I also like the regular cranberry. The only time you eat cranberry, really, I feel like, is Thanksgiving, a little bit of Christmas. I'm all about it. I love it.
And also, I don't know what Virginia's thinking here, but apparently in Virginia, the number one Thanksgiving side is macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese is a once-a-week dinner food. It is not a Thanksgiving food.
My
it is like
oldest
year-round.
son, a lot of times for meals when we're out at restaurants, will order mac and cheese with a side of mac and cheese. That's how much he's committed to the mac and cheese lifestyle.
That's what we call a boss move. My friends, business owners are taking advantage of a large refund program from the IRS, but it's not so well known, this program. If your business has 5 or more employees and managed to survive the pandemic, you could be eligible to receive a payroll tax rebate of up to $26,000 per employee. This isn't a loan. There's no payback. It's a refund of your taxes. How do you get your business this refund money? Go to getrefunds.com. Their tax attorneys are specialists in this little-known payroll tax refund program. They do all the work with no charge up front and simply share a percentage of the cash that they get for you. Businesses of all types can qualify, including those who took PPP, nonprofits, even those that had an increase in sales. The team at getrefunds.com has already returned over $1 billion to businesses, and they can help you as well. Just go to getrefunds.com, click on Qualify Me, and answer a few questions. This payroll tax refund is only available for a limited amount of time. Don't miss out. Go to getrefunds.com. No risk, high reward. Getrefunds.com.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
The Monica Crowley Podcast is a whip-smart, fast-paced, sassy blend of politics, culture, history, and humor, all brought to you with the sunny optimism of Ronald Reagan's happy warrior spirit. Hi, I'm Monica Crowley, and I've served 2 American presidents, Richard Nixon in his last years as Foreign Policy Assistant, and Donald Trump as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. You've seen me on TV, read my New York Times best-selling books and popular columns, and now you can download my podcast, where you will hear one-of-a-kind insights and interviews. So join me on the Monica Crowley Podcast. It's true appointment listening. Join our legion of happy warriors here on the Monica Crowley Podcast. Listen to the Monica Crowley Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know, Governor DeSantis is focused on the moment and getting it done. That's really the message from him the last few days. And he just points out, and I just think we have to keep hitting this, because remember, there was a red wave. Do not despair. Do not think that there weren't millions more Americans who, after 2 years of Biden, were like, enough. And a big part of it is what's happening at state level when it comes to getting things done. He just made the very clear comparison. Look at what Florida did after the disaster of Hurricane Ian to get people back on their feet, get the bridges back up and running, versus, you know, places like New York and the government there. Listen to this.
Governor, do you fear that there may be a civil war brewing with the GOP? People actually choose you Donald Trump?
No, look, I think we just finished this election. Okay, people just need to chill out a little bit on some of this stuff. I mean, seriously, we just ran an election. We have this Georgia runoff coming, which is very important for Republicans to win that Georgia runoff. I mean, I know around the country, Florida was kind of the biggest bright spot. It was not so bright in many other parts of the country. It was a substandard performance given the dynamics that are at play. So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
I mean,
I agree with
think
everything
that's exactly.
he said.
And he said Florida's an example. This is what I was getting to. Florida's an example that you can get things right. If you had a bureaucracy and leadership like they did in New York, would the bridge to Pine Island have been fixed in 3 days? Of course it wouldn't have. Results, scoreboard. We got to focus on it.
And again, what I would point out is, and I think this is a big deal, DeSantis won Florida right now by more than Newsom won California. Think about how crazy that is when you consider how much baked-in craziness there already is in California to support Dems. Look, Legacy Box, company in Tennessee, my home state, that'll digitally transfer your family videos, tapes, and Super 8 films from long ago onto digital files to ensure they're preserved forever. If you or a family member have boxes or drawers full of old videotapes, the ones you kept because of the contents, they have so much meaning to you and your family. These are the tapes we're talking about. We want to make sure that they last forever because those tapes do not last forever. You know, Legacy Box has more VCRs right now than anyone probably in the country in order to be able to transfer these to digital files. 1 million families have already trusted Legacy Box, the simplest and safest way to digitize your aging videotapes, camcorder tapes, film reels, pictures as well to make sure they exist forever. Take advantage of early access to Legacy Box's best sell of the year. Visit legacybox.com/clay. That's legacybox.com/clay for the Black Friday sale. legacybox.com/clay. Welcome back in. Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. 800-282-2882 if you want to weigh in the second half of the program, Thursday edition. As we are 1 week from Thanksgiving, Republicans have officially taken control of the House. Nancy Pelosi has retired along with much of the leadership of the House prior to the election last Tuesday. That is, in fact, a big win. We'll get to some of your calls in a moment. But Donald Trump, of course, announced on Tuesday that he is going to be running for president in 2024. That has set off the usual spasms of indignation and insanity in the left. And our good friend Sonny Hostin at The View, the dumbest show on television, filled with the dumbest people talking about politics on television. Well, Sonny Hostin says Trump's going to be indicted within 90 days. Listen.
I've spoken to my former colleagues, some of them at the Justice Department, and of course they can't say much, but the word out in the streets is that he's got about 30 to 90 days until some sort of indictment is put out there, right? That's the word on the street. I could be wrong, but that's what I've heard from my federal prosecutor friend.
First of all, they can't talk to her. Let's just say this, Buck. If she has friends in the Department of Justice who are actually prosecutors involved in any way with a Trump investigation, and they spoke to her, that is a violation of their, if this were true.
You are correct. We also have to remember that someone leaked to David Ignatius the contents of a conversation derived through top secret means to try to go after General Flynn.
Definitely leaks. But would you leak to Sonny Hostin?
Risking 10 years in federal prison to do that, by the way.
I just think if you're going to leak Sonny Hostin,
no one's telling Sonny Hostin this, to your point. I'm just saying.
Yes. Let me also mention this, too. Did you see this Washington Post story that came out a couple of days ago? Didn't get that much attention, but I wanted to read a paragraph to you. It ties in with what Sonny Hostin just said. And this is from the Washington Post. Federal agents and talking about leaks. Federal agents and prosecutors have come to believe former President Donald Trump's motive for allegedly taking and keeping classified documents was largely his ego and a desire to hold on to the materials as trophies or mementos, according to people familiar with the matter. And there's another part. This is the Washington Post. The review has not found any apparent business advantage to the types of classified info in Trump's possession. FBI interviews with witnesses so far do not point to any nefarious effort by Trump to leverage, sell, or use the government secrets. Instead, the former president seemed motivated by a more basic desire not to give up what he believed was his property, these people said. So this is kind of fascinating because early on, Buck, we were told, this is part of a vast conspiracy. There's no telling what Trump would do with this information. And now this is in the Washington Post. Again, it didn't get that much attention, but they're now acknowledging, hey, there's no real nefarious motive here. And maybe Sonny Hostin's right. Maybe they're going to bring indictments against Trump. I think that as these stories continue to trickle out, what you're going to see is the same people who have said Trump's going away in handcuffs, Trump's done for over and over. They've been like Lucy, Charlie Brown running up to try to kick the football that Lucy's holding, for those of you who are Peanuts fans. And I feel like on some level, whatever the result is of this Mar-a-Lago investigation is going to come nowhere near satiating their demand for Trump to be evil and for this to be some sort of venal plot that he was involved in associated with these documents.
So I mean, I've got to tell you, man, I remember in the early days of this, when this first came out, and all of a sudden we were, this first came out and we were being told that it was the most serious thing and that Donald Trump had nuclear secrets and all this stuff. And then when the public I will say there is fatigue. They always talk about Trump fatigue, which I think they overstate in a lot of ways. But there's also fatigue with everything Trump does. The media pretends is the beginning of the end, the worst thing that's ever been done. It's just so deeply disingenuous, and I think more and more people see that for what it is. But with the Mar-a-Lago situation, they may bring some kind of a charge, and if they do, I mean, it's going to play out. I think what's holding them back, Clay, is the politics of how that actually affects the possible election, right? There's the possibility that Donald Trump being indicted, they want to, CNN wants to have indictment watch. I mean, they're going to treat it like they're going to cover it more than the OJ trial back in the 90s, right? Remember that? It was like the only thing on TV. It was the biggest thing ever. Oh, indictment watch on Trump. But I do think that even the people who maybe are, were involved in the fatigue over election 2020 stuff, they will react poorly, meaning the independents, some of the swing voters, college-educated white voters. We looked at the numbers who voted Republican but didn't vote for Trump-backed candidates in some of these places. I think if there is an indictment of Trump, a lot of them will be like, okay, the libs are completely insane. Maybe I've got to actually shut this down by voting or backing Trump much more than I had anticipated.
That's why I think this is so fascinating. If there were charges brought against Donald Trump, Buck, I think that this goes in Trump's favor and actually makes it more likely that he would be the nominee, which is why I wonder on some level there's this idea, charging Trump with crimes is going to keep him from being a viable presidential candidate. I wonder on some way, and this kind of ties in with what Democrats did. They said, our democracy's in danger. But then they spent millions of dollars to nominate people that they thought were weaker candidates who were super Trump supporters, which flew directly in the face of, hey, if you think the country's so much in danger, why are you trying to wipe out moderates and replace them with people who give you a better chance to win? This happened all over the country, and to a large extent, they were successful. It helped to keep a monster red wave from overtaking them. I'm starting to think, Buck, that the goal with the Trump investigation is to indict him and thereby guarantee that he is the nominee, because they want to run against Trump. They want him to be the nominee.
Well, I think that's true. And one story that hasn't gotten as much attention as I think it should is that Democrats ran a version of Operation Chaos, if you will. Democrats decided that they were going to back in the Republican primaries the more beatable in their minds candidates. And the numbers, again, looking at the results, looking at the scoreboard, shows it was a successful strategy in a number. Now, you could say no one factor is determinative. Is determinative a word?
Yeah, you got it.
That's a word, right? Yeah, thank you. But that is something we also should keep in mind. They're doing everything they can to shape this electoral battlefield. While we're out there talking about the Constitution, liberty, bringing down inflation, securing the streets, we did the kitchen table issues while they were counting votes out the back kitchen door. Like, that's what was going on here.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars they spent to try to select the Republican nominee that they could run against because they felt like they had a better chance of winning those races than if the more moderate, in quotation marks, Republican were to win. And to a large extent, they were successful when it came to picking the Republicans that they wanted to run against. A lot of Democrats are in office because they ended up being able to run against the weaker, potentially, of candidates when it comes to appealing to the moderate, to the independent voter. And that's to a large extent how Republicans ended up losing on independent voters, even though we flipped, as you said, right now, based on the counting, around 12 million votes from a 7 million deficit in 2020 to right at a 5 million positive in 2022 so far.
Rising inflation, a volatile stock market wreaking havoc on retirement accounts until all of this economic uncertainty and pain turns around. The Phoenix Capital Group suggests you diversify your investments. They're introducing investors to high-value oil and gas investments here in the U.S. with current yields from 8 to 11% APY paid monthly. These are corporate bond offerings, and they're open to both accredited and non-accredited investors. I'm going to give you the website for this in just a second, but keep in mind that an investment in bonds has a certain amount of risk associated with it, and you should only invest if you can afford to bear the risk of loss. Before making investment decisions, you should carefully consider and review all risks involved. This investment has been audited and filed with the SEC. Now, that website address, investingwithphx.com. One more time, investingwithphx.com. If you're in the car, call this number, 323 Phoenix. That's 323 PHOENIX.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
The Monica Crowley podcast is a whip-smart, fast-paced, sassy blend of politics, culture, history, and humor, all brought to you with the sunny optimism of Ronald Reagan's happy warrior spirit. Hi, I'm Monica Crowley, and I've served 2 American presidents, Richard Nixon in his last years as Foreign Policy Assistant, and Donald Trump as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. You've seen me on TV, read my New York Times best-selling books and popular columns, and now you can download my podcast, where you will hear one-of-a-kind insights and interviews. So join me on the Monica Crowley podcast. It's true appointment listening. Join our legion of happy warriors here on the Monica Crowley podcast. Listen to the Monica Crowley podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's not clear Democrats are necessarily going to nonetheless see that as a message to them that they lost control of the House. They'll continue to say, well, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But the reality is here that now that they control that House, there's a big stop sign that's been put up, much as when Republicans took over in 2010 in the Obama administration. So Democrats have essentially said goodbye to some of their biggest ambitions, and in particular, plans of the rest to Build Back Better, these entitlement programs, expansion of Medicare, a lot of their really big ambitions, unless they can win it back 2 years from now.
So that's Kim Strassel from the Wall Street Journal. Very smart. We should have Kim on sometime. She's a very astute political observer, Clay, and she's a friend of mine from years back. And she's just saying, look, this is significant. I mean, I know it's hard when expectations were where they were for this election to recalibrate and say, oh, great, we took the House. But this now means that we're not going to be sitting here saying, they're going to spend another $5 trillion on the Green New Deal, and they're going to try to codify Roe v. Wade, and none of that is happening for the next 2 years. And there's going to be, we can talk more in the next hour about this. I think we should, what some of the things that will happen in Congress and some of the the fights and challenges that lay ahead as a result of this. But this is certainly a step in the right direction. And I guess maybe at some level, Clay, we came close to not even getting this, right? I mean, it's a little bit like you could say, get back with college admissions. You know, it's one thing if you apply to like your dream schools, you don't get in and you end up going to your safety school, right? The school you're pretty sure you're going to get into. But if you were told before by the committee at the safety school, I'm not sure you're going to squeeze in. That safety school feels pretty good. I think that's where we are.
I mean, it's a lot like winning in overtime, a game that you should have won by 3 touchdowns. It doesn't feel good. You wish that you hadn't gone to overtime, but it feels way better than losing in overtime to the team that you should have beaten.
Your analogy is better than mine. But yes, exactly. Same thing.
And look, I think we're likely to end up 222-213 based on the way things are shaking out. And that gavel, I think Kevin McCarthy said this, or someone in leadership in the House said, so the gavel's not a different size based on how big your majority is. So being able to control everything in the House is wildly important. We're going to start in the next hour to lay out some of the investigations of Joe Biden and his potential improprieties as it pertains to Hunter Biden and the business interests that they were involved in. But even being able to force many of these people to testify, even being able to get them in front of you. And we talked with Ron Johnson at the top of this hour, Buck, about the fact that they are working together with Jim Jordan and others in the House to try and ensure that Dr. Fauci is held accountable, that we continue to investigate what exactly happened with COVID, how it got here, what was true, what was not true about the COVID mandates. And I got to say, Buck, credit to Trump. We've been arguing this for at least a year on this show, that every single person who lost their job over the COVID shot mandates, particularly in the military, should get them back. Trump said it in his speech on Tuesday, and suddenly I'm seeing Republicans talk about it everywhere. We've been hammering this for a year. I think it's the most effective thing that he said in terms of altering the trajectory and discourse in the nation. A lot of people are now arguing in favor of it.
Oh, absolutely. And I would add to this that, you know, part of the problem here is that there has been a belief among, I think, a lot of the true Trump supporters, the Trump base, that anyone who ever criticizes Trump in any way is trying to undermine him. But that's actually not true, right? The same way a coach that says, hey, guys, we need to double team this guy. He's getting off too many shots. That's not undermining the team. That's trying to help the team.
Yes.
And making those distinctions and differentiations in politics is really important. And I bring it up because in that Trump speech, there were, as important as what he said, were things he did not talk about, did not focus on, and those are in the realm of the things that people who, I would put myself in this category, have liked so much of what Trump did as president and appreciated so much of the agenda, want to see that focus, that chiseled down and laser-like focus on what the future could be of a Trump presidency part 2. And so I think people are coming around to this idea now that even the best players in the world in their sport have a coach that's going to tell them sometimes you got to do this a little differently. And that Trump is listening to that shows, one, those criticisms were in good faith and were right. And two, Trump is willing to be coached by his base and the people who want to see him succeed. That is a huge step in the right direction.
The biggest thing that was not said sometimes can be as important as what's said. We had Ryan Gerdusky, was it yesterday on Buck or the day before? He was phenomenal. Yeah. He just ran through the data. You know, I'm not trying to tell you anything other than this is what the data tells us. And he said, if you are trying to talk about the 2020 election, for independent voters, that is as toxic as saying you need to defund the police. Okay? In the same way that Democrats basically vanished defund the police, even though they exactly argued for it. And really, I mean, by the 2022 elections, there was maybe Bush out of the St. Louis district, Cori Bush. She's pretty much the only person who's still saying defund the police. And of course, she's paid millions of dollars for personal protection. Of course, she doesn't need the police because she's got private security. But Buck, every one of them lost. Trump didn't talk about the 2020 election because average people out there, I understand for people like you and me who are still angry over what happened in 2020. Same thing with COVID. To a certain extent, everybody just wants to go forward. And if you're talking about 2020, you can't win 24.
To people who view their vote as largely transactional, meaning this is the what have you done for me lately or what would you do for me soon, that's what really pushes their voting one way or the other, which is that the 3% of voters in all these key states who could have gone one way, could have gone the other, there are different issues that matter to them, but they also want to know, what are you doing for me? To them, okay, you're going to talk about the high price of gas, you're going to talk about crime, you're going to talk about these things, but you're also going to talk about an election that was 2 years ago. It was fair or not, whatever our view, whatever the Trump base, whatever the Republican base and the GOP faithful think of that, it was not effective. And so now we have to look at what is effective going forward and shape a message. Because without them, without that tranche of, 3%, 1%, whatever, we lose.
Yes.
So do we want to win or we want to lose?
And some of you out there are like, I don't care if we lose. I want to only speak to the base. I want 40% of people behind me. I understand that argument. I want to win. And I want to win big. And I want to win so big that you can't fake the outcome. Like Florida. It doesn't matter how much rigging there was going on in Florida. Ron DeSantis won by 19. You can't fake it. All right? I want that happening. Look at Georgia. Brian Kemp won by 8 points against Stacey Abrams. You can't fake it. When it comes down to 10 or 15 or 20,000 votes, all that stuff in the margin matters. When you win big, it doesn't matter. We got to win big in 24. We got to put it outside the scope. If you want to weigh in, by the way, in the final hour, 800-282-2882. We've tried to open up phone lines a lot, let people have their say now that we know basically the full scope of what happened in the elections. More coming with you next.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interest. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
The Monica Crowley Podcast is a whip-smart, fast-paced, sassy blend of politics, culture, history, and humor, all brought to you with the sunny optimism of Ronald Reagan's happy warrior spirit. Hi, I'm Monica Crowley, and I've served 2 American presidents, Richard Nixon in his last years as Foreign Policy Assistant, and Donald Trump as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. You've seen me on TV, read my New York Times best-selling books and popular columns, and now you can download my podcast, where you will hear one-of-a-kind insights and interviews. So join me on the Monica Crowley Podcast. It's true appointment listening. Join our legion of happy warriors here on the Monica Crowley Podcast. Listen to the Monica Crowley Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.